Yes, good afternoon, honorable members. The sitting is resumed. Members, when the suspension was taken, we were in Committee of Supply, and to that we will return.
The House is now in Committee of Supply. Our member for St. James Central.
South, sir.
So sorry.
Yes, St. James Central decided to leave Parliament before he's voted out. Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much, and I join, of course, to give support to this bill before us to ensure that the Transport Board is adequately financed to continue the work it's been doing on behalf of the country. And I promise just to make a brief intervention, of course, to salute and recognize the great work that the Minister of Public Works, and by extension, Minister in charge of public transportation, and the Transport Board has been doing under the most trying circumstances. I don't think that many people in this country appreciate the value of public transportation and the Transport Board and what they've been doing. Everyone who sits in this chamber, all 30 of us, perhaps are hard-pressed to remember the day that any one of us had to take a bus in this country or to use public transportation, whether it's privately owned or publicly owned. They always contend sometimes there's a challenge in appreciating what the average commuter goes through when you yourself have the comfort and the luxury of getting a motor car and commuting to where you wish to go. But even though I may not have taken public transportation in Barbados now for many years, I certainly recognize the tremendous importance of having an efficient, well-managed public transportation system that goes beyond the Transport Board. And if we cast our minds back to perhaps the 70s, when we had several privately owned bus companies running the Rock Lane and several others that I remember as a youngster going from Bayfield to Bridgetown and back, there is perhaps, as we look back now, a feeling that the public transportation system back then was more efficient perhaps than it is today. I'm not going to argue the point whether it was worth it and such like to nationalize it, and as late John Michael Jeffrey Manahan Adams did. But certainly we are where we are today. But more importantly, we have to look towards the future. And my view is that Barbados as a whole must recognize the importance, first and foremost, of an efficient public transportation system. If buses are not running on time, whether they be privately owned or publicly owned, workers are not going to get to work on time. Businesses are not going to be able to open and function efficiently. And I start from that point because I certainly recognize the need for workers, school children, and other public persons to be able to get to their places of education, work, and pleasure in a safe and timely manner. If that does not happen, then we are going to have tremendous costs to bear as a nation that we certainly will not be able to afford. And anytime, the classic example, Mr. Chairman, is anytime there is a strike with the Transport Board, businesses are under immense pressure. You're challenged to open, you're challenged to provide customer service. So I don't think any one of us can discount the importance of efficient public transportation system. And even though the issue here today is about Transport Board, I rather look at public transportation from a macro perspective. And that includes the privately owned public transportation system. Not just PSVs, as they call them, but publicly owned transportation system that the Minister of Public Works have been wrapping his mind around and finding a way, or seeking to find a way in which we can embrace the privately owned public transportation system with the nationally owned public transportation system to find the right fit and the right mix that benefits the wider society. We've heard a lot about the Transport Board and the challenges they're in, etc., and the Minister has spoken well on it. There's only one thing about the Transport Board system or institution, Mr. Chairman, I wish to speak on in 30 seconds. And that is to say that I remain very, very concerned about UCAL, which was established years ago to provide mechanical repair work for the Transport Board, chaired by the then-headed Barriers Workers Union, and it was pitched as an opportunity for the workers to own something, enfranchisement. And the truth of the matter, as far as I am concerned, UCAL has been a dismal failure. It has been a dismal failure. It has not worked, but it has been held on to, perhaps for more political satisfaction than anything else. But the business model has not worked. And I suspect that that is part of the escalating costs of maintenance in the publicly owned transport system that exists today. That's all I would say on it at this point in time. But in terms of the privately owned system, Mr. Chairman, look, if we are going to fully embrace privately owned public transportation, we are going to have to level the playing field a bit. And there's some things in there that we have to really work towards. Those ZRs or ZRs, or whatnot we call them, as far as I know, do not currently benefit from duty-free concessions on the vehicles. Transport Board does. If you really want to provide a public transportation system that embraces privately owned ones, then we need to be bold enough and say, well, let us ensure that these privately owned vehicles that are providing the service get duty-free concession, because let us face it, it is a significant capital cost to the owners of these vehicles. And that's why sometimes, Mr. Chair, people have to hustle to make the dollar, because their costs is really exponentially high. And you know, the taxi men, the Zs, I think they're called, the BTs, or those who provide it in the tourist sector, do after a few years get it duty-free. So we do provide duty-free concession for vehicles that move the tourists around this island, but the ones that move the average Barbadians around don't get the same benefit. And as we go forward, I fully support what the Minister of Public Works and his team is doing in terms of seeking to bring the PSV into the public system a lot more than it is before. But I send a word of caution that there has to be a leveling of the playing field where they're able to reduce their unit costs of operation that way. And they would increase the size of the vehicle, perhaps the number of people who can commute. Of course, on the other hand, we expect them to be able to apply routes that are currently not lucrative for them, so that we start to get the right mix therein. Matters of the cost of parks and the duties on parks, those are things that we must be bold enough to frankly address. I met with them a few months ago, maybe a year or more ago, some of them, when they were looking at having a service station, which is now open there on Fontebelle, I think it is, across from my office. But I admire the cooperative spirit of those who attended those meetings, and they desire to find a least cost solution for their business. They recognize it's a business that they were into, and therefore they're trying to find ways in which they can reduce the cost of fuel, reduce the operational costs on the whole, particularly when they're constrained by a bus fare or rate that is fixed by other parties. So it's a very competitive environment in there, and I'm satisfied as a member of Parliament and one who's constituents do use public transportation quite a bit, that we need to be able to help the privately owned operators to reduce the cost. Mr. Chair, I also have a slightly different concern. And I keep asking myself, why is it that these guys are hustling on the road like this? Why is it that they may be seen to be breaking the laws? And this morning at 6:30, I dropped a constituent of mine down to Farm Husband Gardens, down to Oxley's there by NCF, to take a ZR to go to work in Black Rock. And if you could see the way they drove those vehicles, I certainly wasn't getting into any like that. But then again, the guys seem to have to hustle to make a dollar. And one of the matters, Mr. Chair, that we have to address as a government going forward relates to the ownership of some of these vehicles and licenses in this country. And I'll be very frank about it. I am concerned that because many of the operators of these vehicles do not own the vehicles or do not have the licenses, they are forced into some very onerous financial situations where they have to hustle to make a dollar, to take a certain minimum amount of money to the owners, who themselves never take the bus, you know. Now, I don't have the empirical evidence in terms of the number of owners and things, but what I can say to you, anecdotally, is that there are a number of owners of these vehicles and holders of the licenses who never take those vehicles and can't even drive them in some instances. And that, to me, Mr. Chairman, is perhaps the biggest reason why we have that level of lawlessness in terms of PSVs in this country. I am of the view, therefore, that going forward, we have to find a way of creating greater opportunities. Let us call it economic enfranchisement, whereby more of the individuals who currently operate these vehicles can have the chance to own the vehicles and to own the licenses. I believe that that in itself, that movement alone, will help to reduce some of the lawlessness and indiscipline that currently permeates the system therein. But we certainly recognize as a government that public transportation is very critical for economic development and social cohesion, etc. We recognize the challenges that the Transport Board has faced over the years. Successive ministers of public works in this government must be commended for their efforts to retain the rolling stock to the best of the ability of the state. We have not been able to purchase new buses, but I commend the effort to maintain the buses that we've had. I thank those who have been creditors to the Transport Board over the years. I feel their pain as Minister of Commerce when they contact me with what is owed to them, because they too have bills to pay. So if we don't pay our bills to the private sector, they're going to be challenged to retain their level of staff and to pay their own bills. So I must publicly thank those who have been holding strain over time. But as we go forward, I think that the Minister of Public Works and his team certainly on the right page in terms of embracing the privately owned transportation system, enhancing and finding ways in which the Transport Board itself can become more efficient. Matters such as reliability, matters such as timeliness on vessels, on buses and whatnot, become very critical. So, Mr. Chairman, with those few words, I stand fully in support of this bill, and I'm obliged to you.
Honourable for St. Michael Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a contribution here as we debate this supplementary. First of all, let me compliment the Minister and the staff from the Transport Board for their sterling service to the commuters in Barbados, continuing, of course, to supply what I consider to be, and what most people in Barbados consider to be an essential service in Barbados, in the face of the reduced rolling stock, the irregular breakdowns, and of course, all of this is happening in the face of severe public criticism from those who can't access the services of the Transport Board. But nevertheless, the board has been in place for a number of years, and to my mind, and to most people, supplying an essential service. Because we must consider that although there are about 120,000 private vehicles on the road, there's still a real necessity for the public transportation, both in terms of the Transport Board and the private sector vehicles who service that particular constituency. I want to speak directly to the question of the integration of the private sector into the regular services or service that is offered by the transportation system in Barbados. I think it is, the integration of the private sector is absolutely necessary, and it is one initiative that this government should never resile or back away from. As a government, we have a responsibility to supply that service to the traveling public, to the commuters who are in need of this particular service. And I think we should frame a program around the natural integration of the private sector into the transportation mode in this country. And I believe that we should use any means necessary, legally, of course, to ensure that this happens in the shortest possible time. I heard the Honourable Member for St. James South, who spoke just before me, speaking in terms of the old transportation companies or the old bus companies, and I am old enough to know that we have had the services of the people at the Rockland, the Federal, and the Federal in particular, because that particular bus company, which was located where the now Federal Motor Spares is located, that was the company that serviced the immediate areas in which I grew up, that is the Bush Hall, Bank Hall area. And of course, on the West Coast, there were private sector entrepreneurs and concessionaires who, like Branch and Blackett and those kind of people who operated on the West Coast. Now, the private sector vehicles, quite unlike some people, they have a lot of time for private sector vehicles and their operators. Because I believe, Mr. Chairman, that those workers are some of the most productive workers in Barbados. I know that several people have been criticizing them for the many infractions that they commit on the road, but I want to say that if most of our workers in the general working environment in Barbados were to be exposed to the pay system that is employed by these public service vehicle operators, that maybe they themselves will be confronted with the infractions in their very workplaces that the public service vehicles are exposed to. If these private sector operators don't earn, they are not paid. And they are paid based on their productivity levels. And if they probably see other people standing in their way of earning a living, and I'm not for one single moment endorsing their bad behavior or endorsing the several legal infractions that they're accused of. But I am saying that these private service vehicle operators are some of the most productive people that we can have in Barbados. And I'm saying that if some of these same people outside of the private sector vehicles, if they were to be confronted with the same situation, they too would probably, of course, commit some of the infractions in their own workplaces that these public PSV operators are accused of. Now, talking about the integration of the private, the PSVs, I've noticed that the TASI pilot project on Eden Village and in Sturgis, they they have reaped some successes. I use the Edie Village route on Thursdays to get to Cabinet, because coming from where I live in St. George, I use that circuitous route to get to Cabinet because it is normally free of traffic. And I can't think of a single morning between 9 o'clock and about 9:30 when I take that route to get to Cabinet for 10, that I don't see a transport board bus on that route, either between Edie Village or down by the old BET at the bottom of Wildy. It tells me that the service is normally on time and it runs regularly. And I want to compliment the Transport Board, and I think that they should broaden the TASI pilot project. I believe it should have by now moved out of the pilot phase into a genuine service that they're offering to the public, because by my noticing the regularity of the service on that particular route, the Edie Village route, I can see that it is bearing some success. And I believe that the Transport Board or the Barbados Transport Authority should really widen that pilot project and integrate it fully into the transportation system in Barbados. I've also noticed from the records that about 25,000 people per month use the Edie Village route, and some 35,000, I understand, use the Sturgis route. So it tells me clearly that there is a need for the service, and it should be seriously widened from the pilot phase and move, of course, into the mainstream of the public service offerings in terms of transportation in Barbados. Now, if you treat people badly, or if you treat them well, they respond to the treatment that they're given. And I believe, generally speaking in Barbados, the PSV operators, I'm not talking about the owners so much, but the operators, because they are the frontline people, they are the people who are in the vanguard of supplying the service to the general public. And I feel if you treat people badly, or the way you treat people is the way that they respond to you. And although these people are supplying a service that is essential to the general public, I still think they're seen in a bad light. And because of that, normal human behavior is such that if you treat somebody badly, they respond to you in a similar fashion. And I don't think that they should be treated like this, although they bring a lot of it on themselves. But of course, that is, of course, generated from the fact that they have to earn their living by the productivity levels which they maintain. And I believe that as a government, we should find some accommodation for them in the overall revamping of the transportation system, that they would no longer have to pursue their living, though they should be mindful at all times of their productivity levels, that they should not be in any way to jeopardize their own personal safeties and their own personal welfare by pursuing the living in a way that would put that in jeopardy. I think that as a program, as an overall policy going forward, from this administration, in the next administration, when we are re-elected to office, we should offer some duty-free concessions to the private sector vehicle owners. The other tax breaks, and of course, that are offered now to some of the taxi operators in Barbados. I believe that we should fashion a package of concessions and tax breaks to that particular sector, because they are integral to the transportation system in Barbados, and I believe that their time has come where we should look and package some concessions and tax breaks for this private sector Now, also, I know that the minister and his ministry, they have also embarked on the enhancement of the terminal facilities, and that is a direction that we should move in expeditiously to bring on stream the kind of facilities for the private sector people, because again, I go back to my philosophy that the way you treat people is exactly the way that they will respond once they are human beings. We should embrace them into the transportation of school children, because already there are several private sector people, shuttles, who now transport our children. One of my children, when he was a young boy, I actually paid for his transportation from and to school. And there are several private sector companies that are already in the business of transporting children, and I feel that we should move also in that, to embrace those private sector people in the transportation of our school children, because, again, of the inadequate rolling stock of the Transport Board. And the same thing with our elderly. If our elderly we could find some way through, of course, I know that the payment for the elderly who travel on our buses come out of the vote of the Welfare Department. This could be widened, and of course we can look at it with the Ministry of Finance, of course, in establishing a system where those PSVs could be embraced and brought into the fold, and of course expand the offerings to the elderly. Because these workers on the transports in the PSVs, despite the several infractions and the violations, of course, we are very much aware of the loud music, the vulgar music, and of course some of the lewd ads that appear in these buses, these vehicles. They have to start treating themselves seriously. And again, if they behave badly, they will not get the kind of respect of the traveling public. And as a whole, they have to bring themselves together and ensure that these things with loud music and vulgar music and lewd ads on their buses is something that should be a thing of the past. They certainly display a sense of humanity and accommodation and facilitation of our traveling public, as sometimes you don't even see on the government-owned buses. We see them, of course, carrying children to their doors, the doors of their homes, the crossings. They make sure that the children cross, of course, safely. They place elderly close to their homes, and they wait on passengers as they approach buses. That is something, of course, I believe the regulations of the Transport Board do not allow the transport drivers to behave in this way, but certainly there is a there's a certain kindness and humanity that you see displayed with the PSVs. And I speak of all of these positives because several times you hear so many negatives about the PSV operators that sometimes you believe that they are people from outer space. But like I said before, I have a lot of time for these people because I think they are playing an important role in the transportation system here in Barbados. Now, there's an important sector, of course, employing hundreds of people. The number of people who are employed with the PSVs is a significant number, Mr. Chairman. Of course, and they contribute through their taxes and the duties that they pay for their vehicles, generating tremendous economic activity with the purchase of parts, diesel, and accessories. Again, this particular group is an important group to the transportation system in Barbados, and they should not be ignored. And I believe, as a government going forward, we should fashion and package a set of measures to address them directly and bring them into the fold and make them feel as if they are needed and if they're wanted. I'm all for the formal integration of the PSVs into the transportation system. I want to reinforce that. And an integration, of course, that has been eliminating the funding directly from central government, because the role that they play, of course, when they play a particular role, that eliminates the funding of the central government to the Transport Board, decreases the cost to government. And certainly it is not like the foolish ideas that you're hearing out of the mouths of the Barbados Labour Party in opposition. For instance, I just heard recently that the Barbados Labour Party, these words fell from the mouth of the leader of the opposition only yesterday at a hurried press conference, that she intends, if they are elected to government, to close down the entire South Coast. Private sector businesses, you know, She's going to close down the entire South Coast, send home hundreds of workers that are employed on the South Coast, and pay them. Now, we are trying to eliminate costs, payroll costs, and transfers in central government, or from central government. But she is going to close down the entire South Coast, sending home hundreds of private sector workers, and transferring the cost of the payroll from the private sector to central government. And she's doing this, of course, in tandem with eliminating or repealing the NSRL, and that's reducing revenue, and on the other hand, increasing expenditure by starting back paying for the tertiary level students. So in everything that she is doing, reducing revenue, increasing expenditure, and now she's adding private sector payroll costs to government costs. It's amazing. It's amazing. Now, if the leader of the opposition and the Barbados Labour Party as an opposition, because I believe this was all prompted because of Barbados Today, prompted them, driving them to come forward to bring some ideas, put some ideas on the table, because up to now, the public policy of the Barbados Labour Party going forward as a government in waiting, it has been bereft of any proper ideas. So she's been forced yesterday out of her laziness of ideas, bankruptcy of ideas, to come forward with this foolish plan of sending home public sector workers, private sector workers, and pay them out of the public purse. I've never heard anything like that. If they have no ideas, just shut your mouth and stop talking nonsense, idle nonsense. But Mr. Chairman, I am really big on the question of the integration of the private sector. This is integration? Oh, I believe that is not the kind of integration I'm talking about. But I want to urge the minister and the ministry to take into consideration holding hands with the PSVs, bringing them on board, making them very much part of our transportation system. They are an important cog in the wheel of transportation offerings in Barbados. And I believe the time has come that they should be integrated. Mr. Chairman, I'm obliged to you.
For St. Lucie.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a short intervention and to say that even though I support the transportation system and everything, that the point made by the honourable member that just sat is a very important one, is that if we are going to be doing integration, that we also have to look at the senior citizens of Barbados and recognize that if we are going to be taking them into consideration, we also have to acknowledge that we have to facilitate them. And the point that has been made previously, that we will have to look at increasing the size of the vehicles at the bottom end, has now been substantiated even more. And that is, we cannot expect our senior citizens to be boarding the ZRs, but they can be accommodated on the minibuses. And the proposal for us to accommodate them by giving them concessions and so on, to moving from ZRs to the minibuses and even bigger buses, has now been even more substantiated by asking the Minister of Public Works to accommodate the senior citizens in the private sector vehicles. But I also want to make the point that in the north, especially in St. Lucie, I'm just asking the people who organize the transportation to recognize that Cornertown is a very long route and that it is impossible to, even though it's possible, but it's not right to combine Jose Hill and Cornertown when one acknowledges that Collington is in one direction, then you have to traverse some of the Pike Corner area then to get to Josie Hill. That if you are going to be combining services, then you have to be very effective, look at the cost savings and so on, and it makes more sense to combine Josie Hill and Pike Corner because they are much closer. And we have to understand also that after people have worked long hours, that it's going to be very important that we do not keep them waiting too long. And that is why I continue to make the point that we need to remove people from Bridgetown much quicker and remove people from Bridgetown quicker and not much quicker. And so that when you put them in the point of Speightstown, because it's a greater possibility for them to move from Speightstown than to move from Bridgetown, because when you create the delay in Bridgetown, you create frustration. But if you bring them to Speightstown, the opportunity for them getting home quicker will be there. So I want to say that I fully support the discussion. I fully support the money being allocated, and I want to tell the workers of the Transport Board that they're very important and that they are appreciated, and we also expect them to appreciate the traveling public because they are all brothers and sisters, and I want them to continue to do a good job. Ignore that sometimes that there might be some persons who might not do the right things, but we need to bring them along also to ensure that we acknowledge that we are all part of the productive sector and that we need to treat each other in a human way, and that is that commuters should treat the workers good and the workers should treat the commuters good. That is the point I want to make, sir, and I fully support this.
I remember for us in Philip Nor.
First, I want to thank all members for their contributions, and of course, following on from the member for St. Michael Central, did mention the fact that we should embrace the PSVs, the private sector partners in the public transport policy. Further embrace them, let me say further embrace them, because of course we've launched the taxi project. That obviously is a manifestation of the integration and also embracing the private sector players. Certainly, we have been very accommodating to the PSV's owners. We've had so many meetings with them. In fact, they have put their case for duty-free concessions to us. They have actually came with all the scientific information, and we have supported it, and we have sent it on, of course, to the Ministry of Finance for, of course, for further discussions. But indeed, as Minister of Transport and Works, of course, the supporting of duty-free concessions from our ministry, we have no issue with it, but of course, there must be certain conditions. And the perception out there is that this is a group of business people involved in the private sector and public transport that are deemed to be unruly and deemed, of course, to be reckless in their behavior on the road. Now, I must say that as a result of some of the meetings held with these private sector owners, they've started to clean up their act. They've actually used technology in their vehicles in terms of I think GPS, they call it, so that they can be able to follow the vehicles during the day to ensure that it's en route. They're also engaged with insurance companies in terms of even when they employ certain drivers or conductors on their buses, they set certain standards and certain criteria to be followed in conjunction with the insurance companies and other stakeholders. So they're looking basically to bring a better image and order to their industry. And that also is in keeping with the fact that we came with amendment to the Road Traffic Act. And the amendments to the Road Traffic Act allow for random testing of drivers on public service vehicles. It also allows that, I think it's section 108 of the Act, it gives the transport authority the power to issue to an owner of a vehicle if that vehicle, the person using that vehicle, was involved in more than two incidents relating, of course, to convictions. And indeed, once that third conviction takes place, the transport authority now have the power to suspend the permit for 6 months or so. So they're seeking from their end to bring order, and from our end too, as a ministry, we are seeking to bring discipline and order to that sector. But we have no issue, Mr. Chairman, with supporting duty-free concessions to that sector. As I said, they perform an important role in public transport. And to this day, Mr. Speaker, sir, the integration project is a project that needs to be expanded. I said that before. But it must be expanded once we have now to look now at the enabling environment. You know, Mr. Chairman, the fact is that we have transport inspectors under the Road Traffic Act. But their powers are limited under the Road Traffic Act. And indeed, Mr. Chairman, when we look at other jurisdictions, particularly Jamaica, particularly Trinidad, inspectors in those jurisdictions have so much power that they can go out there and ensure. Let me make this point further, because once a PSV holder, he gets a permit, the transport inspector, of course, work only to a particular time. But after time, there's no transport inspector up there to ensure that he follows that route, or he keeps on that route to the permitted time. And what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, is that in relation to the expansion of the transport authority, we have to include, right now we have monitors. So we have to expand some monitors so that we can ensure that the project meets what we believe it should meet, and that is providing a reliable service alongside the public transport system. Mr. Chairman, sir, you know, we hear all this talk about vulgar music playing on the buses. But it's already in the law. Okay. But it's a question of enforcement. That's right. It's already there. So it's a question of enforcement, Mr. Chairman. So we have to ensure that, you know, that they comply with the legislation, and that breaches of the legislation, that, of course, the appropriate action is taken with those who have the power to carry out the prosecution. So this is want to make the point, Mr. Chairman, that at this point in time, where we're having challenges with the public transport, that we believe we've met with Transport Board, and they've identified the routes that they have challenges on. And the solution to that, Mr. Chairman, is, of course, expanding the taxi project on those projects. Whether it be at peak hour times, whether it be off peak hour time, we have to embrace them and formally embrace them in this project, so as to bring about some, to alleviate some of the issues that the passengers, the traveling public, that they're facing at this time. Mr. Chairman, the taxi project was introduced because we are looking at setting some standards. And what did it involve? Those private sector persons involved in it, the bus conductors and the drivers had to actually go through some form of training. We decided to say, look, let me decide to have a scheduled service, because outside of the taxi project, there's no scheduled service for the private sector. And I believe that there will come a time, Mr. Chairman, that in creating that enabling environment, it will also involve the necessary amendments to the legislation to empower transport inspectors to set them up in zones to ensure that once that PSV owners have that permit, then the transport inspector will be empowered to ensure that the owner or the driver follow the permitted route and that the passengers along that route, they are properly serviced. Because what is happening, Mr. Chairman, is that you're seeking out to bring a private sector person driven by a profit motive into a system that involves the national bus service that, of course, is really there to provide a social good and indeed a scheduled service and will have to be at certain points, whether it's downtime or not. But the owner who owns a business, that is a ZR minibus, of course, you cannot force him. At this time, there's nothing in the law forcing him to go there to drive his bus at 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, or 10 o'clock, off-peak hours. And I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, that the enabling environment will mean that the necessary legislative amendments will have to be made to empower or give more power to transport inspectors. Before, Mr. Chairman, as you know, the transport board buses had somebody called, used to call them an inspector, used to call them a spy. But the spy was there to ensure that at a certain time, he checked, they had two purposes: to ensure that the monies collected matched what the tickets that the conductor had, and also to ensure that the bus is on the route at a particular time. And then since we removed that, there's no coverage, Mr. Chairman. There's no coverage. And in fact, the members of the Royal Barbados Police Force, they're saying, look, we are challenged. Air Traffic Department is challenged. We have charges. So what we do? The transport inspectors, Mr. Chairman, only work from 8 o'clock to 4:30. For any possible infractions, checking inspections, making sure that vehicles are roadworthy. I can bring out a vehicle now after 5 o'clock. There's no one to check. There's no one checking my vehicle, unless the police stop me. Transport inspectors are finished working. So in any future transport policy, Mr. Chairman, would include now personnel working on a shift basis with the legislative powers to do what is necessary to ensure, one, that they travel on the permitted route, two, after hours, make sure that these vehicles are roadworthy, and to ensure that there are no further infractions of the law during that period. And that is the integration that we have to seek to do. We are doing it. We have monitors in place now, and they travel on the buses. They travel on the private sector buses in the taxi project to ensure that the driver follow the route. We also have GPS on them, so that the office now, Transport Authority now, can go on their computer to ensure. I think I have the app on my phone too. I think want to see where the ED Village bus is on. Now I can go on my phone. I can say, yes, it is en route on a particular thing. That's the use of technology that you have to use in public transport. So, Mr. Chairman, sir, the expansion of the taxi project, the fact that we've come to Parliament, sir, to ensure that the service providers who are in contract with the Transport Board to fix those buses, that we can fulfill our obligations on the contract with those service providers to have some other buses out there in the interim so that we can now bring our buses back up, availability back up. But at the same time, sir, our duty is to move passengers, and particularly the school children, particularly those school children. The Minister of Education has supported it. We've done a costing, and we believe that from now to September, using private sector, be it coaches, be it minibuses, be it ZR, I'm not prejudicing any tendering process, because we're going up for expression of interest. It will be done in a transparent process, and whoever is selected, we've done the cost, and I believe that the cost is about $150,000. From now, I think, to the next term, to September. And I believe that once we get that system in place, then we'll be able to move the nation's children to their homes and to their schools in an orderly way. So, Mr. Chairman, sir, again, I also want to say, because they'll be critical, they're saying they now come talking about electric buses. But we know that is part of the public sector energy smart program. It's part of that already. Discussions are going on now for the last year or so, or 2 years, with the Ministry of Energy and the Transport Board. And the pilot project is to purchase 2 electric buses. But we are going further. We are saying yes. But we've gotten some funds, and we say, look, then we analyze the cost savings. And we look and we say, look, if it costs Transport Board $11 million in 1 year on diesel, and if we introduce the electric vehicles, it can also redound to the benefit of Transport Board in terms of savings for maintenance and use of fuel, then we don't see why we can't go that route and buy a further 2 other transport electric buses as a pilot project and test it on certain routes, which would involve, sir, the training involved. We have to put the necessary infrastructure in place, and I don't think, sir, that it would take long in going that route. But in the meantime, sir, our responsibility is to get those buses back out there, back to availability. There's some parts down from some owners, part owners in Barbados, that we have to purchase that will give us another 30 buses out. As I said before, the hoist at MTW is back up to increase and to improve inspection of the buses, and certainly we will now get back to where we were before. But in the meantime, in the interim, we are expanding the taxi project, sir, to assist in the reliability of our public transport system. Again, sir, Mr. Chairman, I thank you, and I move that head for the standpoint.
Seconded. The question is that head for the stand par. All our members in favor, please say aye. All our members against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
One thing, you know? Oh, it was on one thing. Okay. Mr. Chairman, Order 21B. In the name of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries and Water Resource Management, to move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $48,611,594 from the Consolidated Fund, and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017 to 2018, as shown in the supplementary estimates number 19, 2017 to 2018, which form the schedule to the resolution. Head 72, Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries and Water Resource Management, in the amount of $48,611,594.
Our member for us, St. Philip West.
Mr. Chairman, these sums of money in regards to this resolution is required to bring to book a set of monies that were advanced to the Barbados Water Authority to cover payments to the Barbados Light and Power, as well as to Ionics Freshwater Limited, and also to settle outstanding obligations with respect to a $150 million bond that was had in, I think it was 2003, 2004, and payments were to be made to the Republic Bank. So the sums of $15 million was to be advanced via the Ministry of Finance to the Barbados Water Authority to cover payments to the Barbados Light and Power, $3 million to Ionics, and the Republic Bank payments was $7.75 million, and we advanced a further forward payment of $7,757,769 for payments for 2017-2018. The challenges that these monies were about to be or were advanced to deal with really evolved, sir, because of the 2013, 14, and 15 droughts in the country. As a result of that, the revenues of the Barbados Water Authority fell significantly, and then there had to be new infrastructure, capital infrastructure that had to be put in place, that had to be financed, these being new wells and new mains, etc., to deal with some of those challenges that that the country was having in the north. And as a result of that, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance stepped in just to ensure that the Barbados Water Authority had the funds to maintain its accounts payables and to manage down those particular bills. So with those few words, Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Head 72 stand part.
Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
Mr. Chairman, sir, this is not the Water Authority, but you mentioned Water Authority. It is. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, sir, I just wanted to make a few comments on this particular heading, especially as it relates to the transfers to the Barbados Water Authority, which the Honourable Minister would have mentioned. And of course, although he would have spoken specifically to issues of monies owed to agencies like the Barbados Light and Power, etc., I think that it is very topical and important that one of the very special works that is being carried out in the Ministry of Agriculture, now the Barbados Water Authority specifically, should be mentioned at this point. I think an honourable member earlier in this consideration mentioned a press conference yesterday evening of the Leader of the Opposition where certain positions were put to the public of Barbados. And there's nothing wrong with the Leader of the Opposition making her points. I think, however, the government also must answer some of these points, especially when they speak to issues which are already in the process of being corrected. I think the Minister of Agriculture is being very careful in terms of making commitments by way of his team in respect to how progress is being made in terms of the repair work at the South Coast Storage Plant. And Mr. Chairman, sir, the public of Barbados must be comfortable in the fact that repairs are being carried out. And that is the important fact, that there is improvement every day in respect of reaching a point where we will see an end to the unacceptable position of sewage on our streets on Highway 7. The government of Barbados, this administration, this Minister of Health, the Minister of Agriculture, and all the Prime Minister have made it very clear that this is an unsatisfactory condition. We have, however, made it very clear that the difficulties associated with repairs are not simply overcome. And I think that I have listened very carefully, along with listening to the comments of the opposition. I've listened very carefully to the comments, and very importantly to the comments of the Barbados Water Authority in terms of where are they at each step of the way. At each step of the way, where are they in terms of reaching an answer? And as we have gone on, they have indicated, yes, there are issues associated with the mechanical operation of this plant. And everybody now is picking up their commentary, whether it was designed and placed in the right place, whether the outfall should be at Needham or whether it should have been at, I suppose, somewhere else. Whether there should have been 1 outfall or 3 outfalls or 4 outfalls, I don't know. How many emergency positions we should have contemplated and put in place. Recognizing, of course, that as far back as 2005, the same emergencies had to be responded to in terms of the South Coast Sewage Plan. And the requisite permits were obtained and put in operation with respect to the issuance of sewage in areas where were less than satisfactory, that is in areas of the swamp, and the repairs were carried out in that same area of the bank, where the Scotia Bank on Highway 7. So, when we have members of the public standing by sewer manholes and making pronouncements about conditions, you know, it is begging the intelligence of the Barbadian public. And we need to separate, as I heard reference yesterday evening at the conference, to the silly season. Let's separate the silly season from men and women at work trying to repair a situation. You know, over the weekend, and then we have a mixing of issues. Over this last weekend, we had a particular problem which manifested itself on the South Coast, where, separate from the issues of the suspected broken pipes, etc., in the 24 feet under the ground, by the way, where the effluent and influent systems have been significantly compromised. Separate from that, on the plant itself, the 4 effluent pumps which push the treated effluent out to Needham's Point, there was a difficulty in the operation. They malfunctioned. I keep my ears close to the ground. Nose, ears, everything close to the ground. So I know what's going on. I visit the suspected areas. I visit the affected areas. And I make sure and satisfy myself that there are men and women like us out there making sure, giving of their time, of their intelligence, and of their analysis to make sure corrections are taking place. So that the effluent pumps, because of the malfunction, were causing some a bit of back pressuring on the entire backflow, on the entire system. So we had a rise in levels in terms of effluent all along the pipework of the sewage plant. And this manifests itself with some manholes in Worthing of itself, in St. Lawrence, right outside the plant itself, and particularly at the St. Lawrence School. Immediately, Saturday afternoon, 2:30, 2 o'clock, we were at St. Lawrence School with the teachers, the chief medical officer, the environmental focal point of the Ministry of Health, myself, the head teacher and form teachers, assessing the situation, speaking with the Ministry of Education, and making sure that the correct decisions were made. And indeed, speaking to parents, because a number of parents, of course, live in that area and would obviously have recognized the kind of situation. So there was some backflow into the extremities of the school, which extend, are near to the northern extension of the school. And immediately, the recommendations were made by the Ministry of Health, speaking to the chief education officer and her team, and certain contemplations were put in place, which included closing the school. But repair action was there. But meantime, sir, and importantly, there were men and women at work on the sewage plant repairing the electrical problems and mechanical problems associated with the operation of the effluent pumps. That repair was carried out and completed around 12:30, 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon. And we were promised that once those pumps began to operate again, and effluent was now finding its way where it should be, 1.2 kilometers outside Needham Point, we would see a rebalancing of the system, and our levels would return to normal. In the meantime, the permissions that would have been required for the Barbados Water Authority to carry out any action, any emergency action in terms of the management of the sewage, those permissions were being discussed with the relevant agencies, the Environmental Protection Department and the Ministry of Health, to the extent that the Ministry of Health is involved. Mr. Chairman, a lot of people are a little confused too. You see, around 2000, 2005, the Barbados Water Authority, the Environmental Protection Department, and the Ministry of Health and the South Coast Sewage Plant were one. They were under the same minister. Those entities are separated. The Barbados Water Authority is at the Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Health and the Environmental Health Unit is with the Ministry of Health, and the Environmental Protection Department is the Ministry of Environment. So it is not this one. There is a need, therefore, for coming together of these bodies from time to time to discuss the situation. That has been corrected. As I said, the effluent pumps, there has been a rebalancing. In the meantime, and I'm sure the minister will indicate, the work on the injection wells at the sewage plant continues. We know that it is very close to the completion of the first well. When the tests are carried out and everyone is satisfied, including the Environmental Protection Department, the appropriate actions will be taken in terms of turning some of the treated sewage, because we're not going to throw the raw sewage into the injection well. It would not be ideal. So we are going to screen it to the extent that it is in a much better condition before introduction. And chlorinate. There you are. You see, and we talk about engineers, and I listen to the same engineers that other members of the public listen to, and I listen to the discussions very carefully. And we're not going to call him name, but Mr. Hutchinson, who made the points about the outfall, and the outfall in Worthing has been discussed many times. It is not a good solution, let me put it that way. And he admitted anyhow that it would have to be modeled, etc., before any conclusion can be made. And this is not, modeling is not something that you do overnight. This is something that involves high science and high measurement of currents, etc., whether when you introduce it at Worthing, if it's not going to finish up at the same beaches in Hilton Hotel, all kind of different things. If it won't finish up in St. Vincent or indeed Trinidad, you can't just do things like that. And he admits it. I mean, in truth and in fact, he did say that would have to be modeled before it was introduced. So the injection wells is the solution which the Water Authority has put. It has put it to the Environmental Protection Department, the Coastal Unit, and there's general acceptance that once the testing, etc., is satisfactory, we have a solution. I heard the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, because they don't come in here to discuss issues with the public anymore. They've stopped doing work in the Parliament, but they do their work on Facebook and what's the other thing, sir? WhatsApp and those. But we still do the work that we have to do with the public. We still have to make sure monies are properly allocated for the areas where we contemplate the spending. So I heard the Honorable Leader say that once they have come to government, I think it would be, I think she used dig, 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 dig. Dig is the word, the key word, as a matter of fact. That was one of the topics. Now, dig, dig, dig may sound good. But the point is, you have a continuous running system, millions of gallons per day. So dig, dig, dig is fine. We could have dug already. But we would also finish up with some kind of type, what do you call it, volcano, geyser, that's the word, thank you very much. Some kind of geyser, and to a totally uncontrolled extent. There are pipes under pressure buried at 24 feet 24-inch diameter pipes, Mr. Chairman, that we're dealing with. Something like 20 to 24 feet under the ground. That is what we have to get to. We therefore have to get that liquid, that sewage, that effluent, that influent out of the way before you can dig, 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 dig. And once that's out of the way, the Democratic Labour Party in government, through its agency, the Barbados Water Authority, will dig, 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 and correct the problem. Or we will employ technology that does not require digging. But these are engineering decisions which I wouldn't undertake on my own. I would seek advice from the appropriate authorities. And once guided, I would then confidently go forward. Now, there's an important factor which we also have to bear in mind. The Ministry of Health has been on top of this situation throughout the process. We have held weekly meetings, chaired at the Ministry of Health. There was one today. I have already got a preliminary report on it, and I'm awaiting a final report. There was one today, and we have constantly indicated to the public of Barbados, what are we doing? We have increased the number of environmental health officers in the affected areas. We have understood the action of some entities who have shut their doors, yes, and who have come to us for advice. We have made sure that training and retraining of food handlers is done. We continue in conjunction with the Barbados Water Authority to test our potable water in the area. We continue to monitor the results of tests for the nearshore water in conjunction with the Environmental Protection Department and the Coastal Zone Unit. These are things that are done in Barbados all the time. The sluice gate at Worthing has been open for years and closed for years. And whenever it is open, there is running into the sea discolored water, all kind of contaminants in the water, organic material. And when it is open, there are red flags placed on the beaches, warning the public and visitors that we do not want them to swim in the areas. And when the all clear is given, after adequate testing of the water quality, then the flags are removed and we can resume our recreation. I've known tourist facilities in those areas to take their guests and bus them to other beaches during those periods. It is common practice. We are making sure that the public is aware of the best practices that should accompany the kind of activities that we're having to face. We work with the police and the Ministry of Transport and Works in respect to the closure or the non-closure of the areas of Highway 7. We constantly bring that matter to the table, and you would have noticed that signage has been placed in Highway 7, appropriately warning drivers to be aware, to slow down, to drive with care. It is not ideal. Nobody says it is ideal. We are working through this. And God knows we are closer to a solution now than we were, say, 6-8 weeks ago. It's because of the coming together of heads. It is because of the coming together of ideas in terms of what is the best solution possible. And it is because of making available the money that is required and all the equipment, whether it be pipes, valves, and we're not talking about the 2-inch pipe that you get at CNI Hardware and in those places, you know, sir. We're talking about 20 and 22-inch perlite pipe. Imported, all of them are not imported from Trinidad or imported largely from the United Kingdom and Canada and the United States. These are not items that you pick up off the shelf. So it will take a little while. But it is confidently expected that the testing of these injection wells will occur on this weekend. And once that all clear is given and they work, we will see a significant abatement. In the meantime, the Barbados Water Authority continues to put in place auxiliary bypass systems, including the acquisition, I believe, of 2 new 10-inch pumps, which are now available for putting in place for emergency action, so as to keep as much of that liquid off the public areas as possible. And they have been able to improve the management, the temporary arrangements associated with that activity. The Ministry of Health has continued to intensify its fogging program in the area in pursuit mainly of the Culex mosquito. This is the one which is, and we are getting some success. The residents of St. Lawrence and Worthing are especially affected, of course, in Hastings, and the fogging activity has been concentrated in that area to make sure there's some available. The Water Authority continues to disinfect the areas where spillage occurs. Of course, there has been deterioration in the road work. If you got water running constantly on a surface, you must expect that the road works would be damaged. So that I believe even now the MPW is looking at what kind of a surface, temporary surface, can be placed in the area to allow limited access, of course. But the good advice, yes, to Barbadians who do not have to pass that area and can avoid it, they should make alternative arrangements for travel until the situation is completely abated. But once that water is off the road, once that sewage is off the road, we will be in a position to carry out full repairs of the roadworks. Indeed, I would recommend, given the kind of timelines contemplated, we probably repair the work even before we start to do any digging if we decide today, or if we are required today, because the kind of times between repairs at the Nova Scotia area, the bank in Worthing, and then when we get down to Tapo's Hastings area, there may be a heavy timelines. And as I've indicated before, when the repairs are being carried out on the road, it's going to be tough. It's going to be even tougher, because then there will be no question about road closures. It would have to be put in place. So I don't think the impression, I want rather, that the impression not go out there that there's someone in this government who is not caring about the public and who are not caring about finding a permanent solution to this problem. But, sir, I want it to go out there that we recognize that every step of the way has to be carefully contemplated. We are dealing with a live situation. It is not a valve that we can close at any point so as to make it free access, uninhibited access to the repair. The men and women at work have to carry out this work in a live situation. So the appropriate bypasses have got to be made, the appropriate cautions have to be observed, or the situation could be worse than the one which is upon us now. I am satisfied, Mr. Chairman, sir, that with these funds and other funds, the Barbados Water Authority, with the kind of expertise that it has available to itself, with the kind of additional expertise that we have on the ground here in Barbados by way of engineering and scientific personnel who can bring out their intelligence to this solution, by the way of our association with our friends of long standing, yes, and Canadians too, and Trinidadians, and Americans, and British. They're not friends of the Barbados Labour Party. They're friends of the government of Barbados, the people of Barbados. The relationships are between the government of Barbados and these sovereign countries. and we get aid from them. The Barbados Water Authority, as a matter of fact, announced only recently, I don't know if the announcement has been made fully, about the $37 million coming soon. I mean, these are sovereign arrangements that are made daily. We work with our partners, our international partners, our regional partners. The Right Honourable Prime Minister and the other heads of government have just come back from an important CARICOM meeting in Haiti, where the question of cooperation and where do we go next? What do we do? What can we do for each other? These are constantly negotiated and discussed issues. They are not the purview of one person in Barbados. They are nationally accessible relationships that are constantly utilized as we seek solutions to the myriad of issues which we face daily. So, Mr. Chairman, sir, I want again to end my short contribution by reiterating to the residents and the business places of the affected areas especially, reiterating our empathy, the fact that we want to work with them, the fact that we are working with them, and that certainly the best information from the Barbados Water Authority is that if once they are able to bring the injection wells into operation, we will be relieved significantly of the kind of experiences which have been regrettably part of our experience of late on the South Coast. So, and even then, I must add, there are systems in place which will make sure that we bring under greater control, day by day, what is an unsatisfactory condition at this time. So, Mr. Chairman, sir, I hope that I've been able to put a few pointers in terms of where we are at, where we are heading, and the concern which we share with the public in respect to this situation, and the fact that with all the expertise that is brought to bear, we are much closer now to a more comfortable and acceptable situation than we were some time back. So I'm obliged to you, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Mr. Chairman, the persons who work, engineers who work at the Barbados Water Authority, have worked there under the Barbados Labour Party, and they've worked there under the Democratic Labour Party. Those engineers who manage the sewage systems, many of them are the same engineers that are now managing the sewage systems today. When the plant started to have challenges in 2005 and 2007, and the emergency provisions were put in place, sir, those same engineers that sat with the other regulatory bodies and came up with an emergency solution, sir, are the same engineers that now exist. And what I find incredible is this view that once one government is out of office, automatically everyone else that works for the new government gone dumb. And all of a sudden should be in a psychiatric hospital. I find it a rather incredible summation, but it happens on a regular basis. You know, what I find important in this discussion, and I'm happy that the member for Sim Christchurch South has raised it, is that this is not a time, Mr. Chairman, to be reactionary. It is not a time, sir, to be rash or attempt to take advantage of persons' emotional distress. It is not a time, Mr. Chairman, to play politics with an opportunity that has national implications, that is not an opportunity created by this administration. And the time for the politics is going to come very, very soon. But I am not going to make this national issue political until the politics is ready to be played. I have the facts. I know the damage that was done to that system up there when the decision after the World Cup was taken to start sending septage to that sewage plant. I also know why the decision was taken to stop that in 2014-15 because of what further damage was done to the plant. I also know what warnings were given by the late Sir Harold St. John and by Sir Henry Ford in regards to a whole number of the issues that will become public knowledge very soon. But this is not the time for that. The time for the politics will come. What I would want to say to Barbadians is this. We are not fixing a half-inch blue pipe in the back of your yard. Or we are not fixing a PVC pipe that is burst in the bottom of your sink. You can go outside and turn off a tap and stop water from coming to your house. Tell me, how are you going to turn off 7 or 8 million gallons of sewage coming at you every single day? How are you going to do it? All right? And if you were able to do it, where are you going to put it every single day? Now, so let us then start to reason a little bit and try to understand that the whole notion of the design of the system, which would have started in 1998-99, and it was commissioned in 2003. Now, the issue that it took so long to actually be completed after it was supposed to be completed in 18 months was because of the design challenges and construction challenges they had in the same said very area that we are having the problems now. But all these things will come out in time. What is also important, sir, that the challenges required resulted in the firing of 2 contractors for bad work. And when the environmental impact assessment work was done, I have the data, but the time will come very soon for that. I also know what the head of the conservation unit, as it was called then, wrote about what was going on. The time will come for that. But the issue, Mr. Chairman, is this. The number of connections to the plant have increased tremendously. The number of restaurants in the south of Barbados have increased significantly. The number of hotels have increased significantly. The size of hotels have increased significantly. So the design for the plant carrying approximately 2 to 2.5 million gallons of influent per day, sir, to be managed, was significantly and is significantly, we are significantly above that amount required for the design specifications. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I've heard persons speak to not understanding that the plant is not that old. But if the plant is operating at 3 or 4 times what its design capacity is, but you're going to make it get old faster. The other critical factor that I want Barbadians to understand is that the infrastructure that is now crumbled, Mr. Chairman, may have been one designed to last 30 years. But if you put it in an environment that is in itself turbulent and corrosive, then what you expected to last 30 years may last 10 or 15. And Mr. Chairman, As I said, I don't want to make this a political matter. During that period of time, the evidence will be provided to show that what we are actually dealing with, Mr. Chairman, is an infrastructure collapse that has resulted, sir, in damage to the force main, high-density polyethylene pipes in multiple places, and also damage, Mr. Chairman, to the carrier or sanitary line taking sewage to the plant at multiple points with blockages, Mr. Chairman. Now, with that reality proven by several scientific tests that were carried out, with the assistance of several other engineering support casts. Because people seem not to understand that we consult. So I am not here, sir, and I am not going to consult with other Caribbean countries and management of sewage systems that had similar challenges in the region. We consult, and the engineers consult. So we have a pretty good idea of what has happened in regards to our system. But we had to be sure, Mr. Chairman, that we found a way first to divert the sewage in an appropriate way that was environmentally friendly, or to be as environmentally friendly as possible, because it would not compromise our nearshore environment and also our potable water supply. It is because of that, Mr. Chairman, that we had consultations with several countries where deep injection wells are used. They have been used in Bahamas for donkey years, and hasn't caused any gunking up. And every time that they have had an issue with a deep injection well, Mr. Chairman, it had to do with fishing, or what you call increased conductivity, conduction activity, because the fresh water sits on the salt water. And when you have deep tidal movements, some of that can get back up in your aquifers. But we don't face that situation in regards to Graham Hall, because there are no aquifers out there. When you dig 5 feet down, what you enter, Mr. Chairman, is brackish water, on average between 10 and 15,000 parts per million, or for the scientists, milligrams per liter of salt water, sodium chloride, and other ionic substances, sir. So therefore, that is not a major issue for us. With the deep wells, sir, you go down into the oceanics. You see, normal aquifers, with respect to what we call sheet water running to the ocean, or underground streams or rivers, are between 60 on average, sir, and 120 feet. So what the guys would have done is you're sending your wells, sir, heading into 400 to 500 feet. But there are no aquifers in the area to cause us those types of problems, but we've gone so far down, and what you do is that you case the well with concrete so that there is no lateral movement. That's an additional protection. But there are people out there talking as though the Barbados Water Authority engineers and those people who we consult have no brains. Only the people on the other side understand physics. And I am going to say to Barbadians, we understand and we know the challenges that you have had. And I want to say to the businesses on the South Coast and the residences the residents on the South Coast. You know, we appreciate your challenges. We sympathize with you. We have friends and families and people who are residents who own businesses, so we empathize with you. But we want you to understand the magnitude of the problem that we are trying to face. And we're asking you to work with us and do not get caught up in these types of fly-by-night solution of shutting down the whole of the South Coast. That is not a solution. The solution that I've indicated are the relevant solutions, because you have to put the source somewhere. You have to divert it. It cannot be diverted in the marine environment. We are signatory to the Cartagena Convention. We are signatory also to the Marine Control Pollution Act. And in 2005, sir, the same Barbados Labour Party entered into arrangements, sir, as a bypass to run sewage in the ocean. And out there now, marching, trying to say to people, if we do it, how bad we are. That's the reason why I don't want to get politically hyped at this stage. It is that time will come. There is a problem to be fixed. It is a technical problem, requires technical solutions. No, it's not a political solution. It calls for design work, engineering analysis, and a plan of action. There is a plan of action. And I'm begging those residences on the South Coast, give us an opportunity to execute that plan of action. The plan is, we will divert the influent first. We're going to divert it, we're going to treat it, we're going to screen it, and we are going to put it into 3 or 4 deep injection wells. Those wells are not in a point where there's any threat to your potable water supply. Second to that, they are so deep that there is no reasonable threat, Mr. Chairman, to your marine environment or to your swamp. You protect that because you can do geological evaluations of the rock formations as you go down, and evaluate those to determine how far you need to put your concrete casings. So it is not a fly-by-night matter. It is science. It's observation, investigation, and then determining how you solve the problem, not talking political rubbish. Furthermore, Mr. Chairman, those works have been done for well number 1, and the testing will be done this weekend. I am confident the test will go well because there are no aquifers to be concerned of. And secondly, you are so deep down in the ground, in the oceanics, that any tidal flows will dilute that influence and carry it miles off, deep down in the ground. There's little or any chance it will come back up because the salt water is heavier than the influence. And it is basic physics. So I don't mind. I thank the Lord for 2 things at least. I understand physics from being taught physics, and physics from medicine and flows. But it bothers me, you see, because as you're working through this national issue, persons are attempting to make it seem as though you can get up there, wave a wand, twiddle your finger, and stop 7 to 8 million gallons of sewage coming at you per day. So, I want also the members and residents on the South to have confidence that we now have our 2 8-inch pumps being established, and they would recall that there was a time when we went for about, I think, almost 10 days when there was no sewage at all on the streets. That's how efficient a 10-inch pump can be. Unfortunately, the one that we had failed, and there was a second one being manufactured that was not in Barbados at the time. Now we have the one that was damaged, is now repaired, and the new one has been sent to Barbados and is now being put in place for commission. So therefore, we have one a 10-inch, and we got a redundancy. And what we are doing is that the 6-inch pump that we had used there by the Old Scotia Bank location, that will now be used to help augment the influent pumps, to help us to keep pulling on the influence coming into the system. But, Mr. Chairman, until you put the sewage somewhere, you can't go down in the system to fix it. So dig means nothing. Shutting down the South Coast means nothing. Where you gonna put it? Now, what is even for me, and I want to thank the management and staff of Barbados Water Authority, because they have to understand Barbados Water Authority was out there struggling, pain, and this government was there fighting with us almost $18,000 a day. And paying waste haulers to pull sewage off of various residences. Now, come on. All right. I mentioned that so that Barbadians understand the complexity of the problem, the financially draining capability of the problem, and the fact that we then had to make sure that we had mapped out this as the final solution. Now, once we divert, Mr. Chairman, there is a plan afoot, I think, this weekend to enter the area by where the pump presently resides, the Scotiabank area, and to look, because we are confident that the 2 10-inch pumps will drop the levels far enough to allow them to go into that area where all of the sonic testings and ground penetrating radar work, as well as the testing work, sir, has shown that your force main is compromised. Right there. And that is where they will now go in to see how they're going to manage that particular repair. And so taken, therefore, Mr. Chairman, those three elements together, that is the diversion, 2, the redundant 10-inch pump systems to keep the levels down, and then thirdly, the use of the 6-inch pump, sir, at the level of the influent chambers to help pull the sewage into the system. And that will give the Barbados Water Authority opportunities to now get in to execute the repairs. So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention those few matters here because, you see, some problems are paroxysmal in nature, sir. That is, they happen suddenly. You have no warning. Some problems are insidious in nature. They creep upon you, sir. And if you build a plant for 1990 specs, and one did not make provisions, sir, for the start of a rapid growth and development on the South Coast, but then it is only reasonable to infer that the plant is going to experience capacity issues at some point in time. It just happens to be that it is occurring at the stage when this government is in office. But the point is, pumps do fail, sir. You go home one day, your stove blow up, sir. Your motor car break down when you're driving, sir. Your toilet don't flush one day. You mean the only people who go ever have no breakdown or anything are PLP people? But I just don't understand this, sir. Even what God makes fail, and people die. So you can't attack us because the pump failed. And it is this level of infantile politics, sir, that I'm getting really concerned, because politics is about educating people and helping them to understand the environment and manage it in the best interest of the people. That's what politics is about, sir. Not infantile games, because people are under pressure and having challenges, sir, because of circumstances, of failure of systems. And Mr. Chairman, as I conclude, sir, I have every confidence in the engineering staff of the Barbados Water Authority. I have every confidence, sir, in the consultative process with the Ministry of the Environment and in the Ministry of Health. There have been an interministerial committee at work for several months now, trying to make sure that we stay on top of progress. And I am therefore asking Barbadians, and in particular those persons living on the South, give us an opportunity to execute the solutions that we have now advanced publicly, and we are in progress in that regard. And I am therefore asking you for your patience in allowing us to bring these solutions to the forefront, and do not be sidetracked by good-sounding, empty, unscientific rhetoric that has no basis in a credible solution in regards to this national problem that we now have. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Hague 72 stand part.
Question is that Head 72 stand part. All our members in favor, please say aye. All our members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of 2 money resolutions in Committee of Supply. Second.
Question is that you now report to His Honor the Speaker the passage of 2 money resolutions in the Committee of Supply. All our members in favor, please say aye. All our members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Yes, honorable members, this full sittings resume. Members, your chairman of committees has reported to me the passing of 2 money resolutions in Committee of Supply.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the resolution be read a first time.
Honorable members, the question is that those resolutions be read a first time. Honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against say, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
I beg to move the resolution be read a second time.
Honorable members, the question is that those resolutions be read a second time. Honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the resolutions be now agreed to. Second.
Honourable members, the question is that those resolutions be now agreed to. Honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Accordingly, those resolutions have now been passed.
Speaker, we commit of government notices.
Yes?
That one too. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to give notice of a resolution to grant the sum of $2,055,010 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017-18 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 21, 2017-18, which form the schedule to the resolution. The others.
Revert to government business, sir.
Yes?
Order number 22. In the name of the Honorable Leader of the House, to move that the House resolve itself in the Committee of Supply to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of this island.
Yes, Honourable Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that Your Honour do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself into Committee of Supply to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of the island.
Honourable members, the question is that I now do leave the chair and the House resolve itself into Committee of Supply to consider the mentioned matter. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
That the sitting be suspended until 20 minutes past 4 o'clock.
Honourable members, the question is that the sitting be now suspended. You want to withdraw the motion to suspend?
I want to withdraw the motion of suspension.
Very well.
The House is in Committee of Supply.
Mr. Chairman, as we are in Committee of Supply, we're going to remain there and do orders 22 and 24. Order 22A, in the name of the Honorable Minister of Culture, Sports and Youth, to move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $3,555,470 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017 to 2018 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 20, 2017 to 2018, which form the schedule to the resolution. Head 78, Ministry of Culture, Sports and Youth, in the amount of $3,555,470. James.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This supplementary is required in the first instance, the sum of $1,527,354 required to supplement the estimates in relation to the National Sports Council. In relation to the National Sports Council, this, of course, is, as you know, the National Sports Council, certainly as a statutory corporation, Mr. Chairman, would have had its allocation in relation to the funds allocated to the National Sports Council. Those allocations, as was done in relation to all statutory corporations, would have had the allocations initially reduced, in keeping, of course, with the requirements in relation to the overall government to contain expenditure. And these adjustments, of course, would have required a number of similar adjustments in relation to the National Sports Council. And, of course, the National Sports Council, because of the nature of its operations, would have found it a bit difficult to make those adjustments in relation to the various obligations of the council at that time. And those obligations, of course, would have entailed a number of accounts payable to a number of creditors. And those are detailed in relation to, for example, the insurance on properties. These would have been funds already expenditure already incurred. Insurance on properties, also expenditure on goods and services, namely creditors in relation to goods and services rendered to the council over that time. And also, Mr. Chairman, there would have been the obligation, of course, to meet the statutory obligations, particularly in relation to the National Insurance Scheme. And that, of course, came to the amount over the period of just over $1.5 million. There were also a number of other payments which fell due. At the same time, of course, Mr. Chairman, that the 5% adjustment and then a further 10% adjustment was done for the Sports Council. They would have also been obligated to pay gratuity to some of the employees during that time. And both of those employees would have died in service, and therefore the obligation to pay gratuity came suddenly and unexpected. And those funds, of course, would have had to be met by the National Sports Council and would not have been budgeted. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, there were also funds to be transferred to Cuba Deporte for the month of December of 2017. And that would have brought the additional amount to about $1.9 million, all funds that would not have been budgeted by the National Sports Council. And I did allude to the monies, of course, payable to the National Insurance. And as we know, the payment of monies to the National Insurance are mandatory and should not be left unpaid. So, Mr. Chairman, that allocation gives the explanation in relation to those monies that would have become due and therefore not provided for in the estimates. And that is why we are before the House seeking the supplementary in the first instance to the National Sports Council of the $1,527,470. $1,354. In relation to the other requests, which is in relation to the Gymnasium Limited of some $2,028,116. In also similar vein, these funds, of course, are being requested to supplement the estimates of expenditure for the gymnasium. And of course, we know that the Gymnasium Limited would have been closed for quite a period of time to allow for the renovations done by the government, Republic of China, to the tune of $19 million. Renovations that I believe, Mr. Chairman, has now placed the gymnasium into a new sphere where, of course, the facilities as immaculately restored as they have been, can now be marketed both locally, regionally, and internationally, and of course within the context of gaining much needed foreign exchange for Barbados. The closure, of course, would have been over a prolonged period, and as we know, the Gymnasium Limited was transferred, the operations were transferred to the Kensington Oval. And I must say, Mr. Chairman, that this particular action certainly reflects a caring approach by the government, because we did have the option at the time of having the entire operations of the gymnasium fully closed down and, of course, sending staff home. We opted to move in a different direction, to transfer the operations to Kensington and to maintain the jobs of those persons at the Gymnasium Limited so that they are able to maintain their arrangements and to meet their own obligations. We felt that that was the humane way to operate. But of course, in doing that, the costs incurred in terms of the supplies and the cost of goods and services, the national insurance, the monies due to the Revenue Authority, all of these, of course, remained, while at the same time, the gymnasium, in terms of its ability to earn revenue, was significantly impacted because they really, at that time, would not have had access to the gymnasium. They operated mainly from the barn located at Kensington Oval. And of course, in all of this time, the expenses continued to occur, and it really was in relation to the thinking that rather than send people home and lay them off, that we would work with the staff, and we did have discussions with the unions during this time. I want to thank the unions too, Mr. Chairman, for working with the management of the gymnasium over this period of time. It was, in fact, a kind of collaboration that speaks highly of what should obtain in terms of relations between the union and employer. Both parties would have met in advance of the move, and both parties worked through this entire process. But of course, in all of this, there is, of course, the impact in terms of expenditure, and the Gymnasium Limited, therefore, had to incur some additional funds that would not have been budgeted. And of course, we have monies there due, for example, to the insurance brokers, $246,231. We also have some other funds due to Sagicor Life, $208,166. We have funds due to the Barbados Water Authority and Light and Power. Of course, the facility, of course, while the refurbishment was being done, would have had to utilize power and other services due to the Barbados Light and Power and so on. The full list of payables, of course, would have been appended in terms of the supplementary. So in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman, this closure would have necessitated the allocation of funds, which of course were not provided for in the estimates, and therefore we are asking for the estimates to be supplemented to the tune of $2,028,116 in relation to the gymnasium. Of course, as I said, with the gymnasium being refurbished, we expect that, particularly in view of the plan of the government to integrate the functional arrangements of the gymnasium into the Sports Council, and also the functional arrangements into of COMI, which is Kesset Noble, on bringing it all under the National Sports Council. We expect to create a restructured National Sports Council, which will be able to deliver the policy framework of the development of sports, the marketing of sports, the sports tourism aspect of it, the increased focus on marketing of the entire gamut of facilities we believe will argue well for a transformed sporting sector in Barbados. But in the short term, as we seek to transition all of this, we know that there will be the need to rely on some allocations from the Treasury. And this is one of these cases where, in seeking to refurbish the gymnasium and to look towards the integration of gymnasium onto the Sports Council and, of course, COMI, we have to meet these additional expenditure. It is not desirable that, of course, even as we plan towards the integration, that we allow these particular debt to move into that. We want to deal with it now, and therefore the supplementary, as I indicated, is before the House in relation to that sum for the Gymnasium Limited. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged in relation to those two aspects of this particular resolution. I therefore move that the resolution, the supplementary resolution, stand part as referred to.
I beg to second that, and also will speak. Mr. Chairman, it is no doubt that, that the $2 million that we are here today seeking on behalf of this organization is money, when you look at the total cost of what was spent on it, that we must consider that this is a minor amount, because when you look at the capital expansion that occurred while this money was incurring, the grant funding is a lot larger than what we have spent from our own coppers. And I want to say that now that this money has been spent on the capital expenditure, not the one that we are speaking about, but the one that occurred previously, that we now recognize that we have a golden opportunity to look at our sports tourism in a different light. And I would expect that now that the directors of the gymnasium, etc., will be seeking to use the gymnasium to bring some very hard-earned foreign currency, and that they will promote it to those countries that would appreciate the facilities and the quality of the facilities that we have offering now at the gymnasium, and that the public of Barbados also recognize that there's now a better opportunity for them to appreciate and use the facilities and to turn it into a profit-making center. It is no doubt that this is the type of thing that we need when we consider that we are now targeting a larger share of the tourism market, and that our tourism market is so diversified that sports tourism can now play a much greater role than what it did prior to the repairs that occurred. So the dislocation at the time was not a negative, even though someone will say that it cost you an additional $2 million. But when you look to see what we gain from it, it's really a drop in the bucket. And I want to say that I support the move by the Minister of Sports for pushing this event and for giving us a world-quality gymnasium, a gymnasium that can be marketed right across the world and that can bring in the necessary foreign exchange. I do not want it to be seen as something only for locals, but I want it to be seen as an asset that can be used to market our tourism product and target especially those sportsmen and women, especially those various universities and so on, who sometimes need space in their off-season and their winter season and things like that. I think that the Barbados is the right location, and I am asking that the directors of the gymnasium and so on exploit this to make sure that we maximize the foreign exchange earnings and that we turn it into a profit center. I thank you.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. Lucie for focusing in on what is really a very important point in relation to the utility of what is really a very sophisticated restoration and renovation of the gymnasium. The gymnasium, throughout its life, I believe over 19, 20 years, has never really had a refurbishment of its facilities. And this is really a movement away from what has in the past been done in relation to government assets. They've really not been a focus on ensuring that government assets can be kept in a state of refurbishment and upgrade to allow for the maximum use. Of course, the gymnasium is a multi-purpose facility. It is used, Mr. Chairman, by sporting bodies, but is also used by entertainment promoters, and indeed has the potential of earning significant revenue, both locally and certainly foreign exchange. In going forward, of course, the gymnasium, because of the kind of upgrades that have occurred through the grant of just about 19 million Barbados dollars, compliments of the Government Republic of China, the gymnasium now has a state-of-the-art international graded floor, which of course allows for our various competing teams, in particular netball and basketball, to be able to practice on a world-class quality floor. And of course, it makes them competitive with other teams. You would have known and heard that, in particular, the netball team, which is engaged in international competition, has for many years complained about not being able to have access to an indoor facility with a graded floor that allows them to practice in an environment that will make them competitive. Now, of course, that is now a reality with this upgrade. And in addition to that, the facility has also been improved significantly through the overhaul of the air conditioning system. It is now had installed a photovoltaic system, which of course will allow for a lesser reliance on the national grid. And we expect that as a result of that particular development, the gymnasium, of course, will be able to provide even more marketable, more competitive rates, as has been done in the past. The entire lighting system has now been upgraded. The roof of the gymnasium, which of course in the past, Mr. Chairman, would have been a cause for concern in relation to the various areas of leakages, that roof has now been completely restored. And we do have a facility that has been significantly upgraded and can be appropriately marketed. And with the integration, as I alluded to, which of course has been given the green light by the Cabinet to move towards having discussions with the relevant parties, we will have, of course, before that is done, there will be the consultation with the relevant unions, and all of the parties will sit down and discuss the way to accomplish the integration of Gymnasium and COMI under the National Sports Council, which will be substantially restructured. We will be looking, Mr. Chairman, at having a number of key departments fully outfitted, mainly marketing, finance department. The National Sports Council is proposed to have a research arm of the National Sports Council. And of course, the various persons in the restructured National Sports Council will have an opportunity to have their skills upgraded. The intention, of course, is not to look so much in relation to moving numbers out, but to see where persons can be reintegrated. And at a previous occasion, I did say that, of course, you could never have a restructured organization without also the looking at numbers, and that is something that will have to be the subject of discussion with the relevant unions. So, Mr. Chairman, in winding up and bringing this particular head to a close, I believe that in the end, the experience of going through the upgrade of the gymnasium in particular, and of course the transitioning for the staff, that experience, I believe, has been able to create a more functional gymnasium. And I believe that, as the Minister of Housing has so eloquently pointed out, that when you compare what is being asked now of this House in relation to what we have gained, particularly in relation to the gymnasium, and of course previously we discussed the resolution for the National Sports Council, all of these entities will be at the apex of the transformation and diversification of the Barbados economy. But in the short term, to be able to restructure them, to be able to retool them, it is absolutely necessary that we get these things done. We are also, I've asked the board of the gymnasium to put in place a maintenance program for the gymnasium, because one of the things that I said before has been lacking is the need for a maintenance program. Now that we have done the refurbishment work, then there must be a maintenance program that will be effective and therefore engage in the periodic maintenance of this facility that will be key to positioning Barbados's sports industry. So, Mr. Chairman, with those remarks, I now move that this head stands barred.
I'd like to second that.
Questions that heads 78 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All honourable members against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, we next move to order number 24. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Social Care, Constituency, Empowerment and Community Development, to move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $2,055,010 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017 to 2018 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 21, 2017 to 2018, which form the schedule to the resolution. Head 42, Ministry of Social Care, Constituency, Empowerment and Community Development, in the amount of $175,000.
Honourable for St. Michael Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The $175,000 that was mentioned is to supplement and meet the estimated expenditure for the Community Development Department for the remainder of the financial year 2017-2018, and of course it falls on the head 42 of the Ministry of Social Care. Now most of this money, Mr. Chairman, to go towards the payment of supervisory work for the construction of facilities at Belle Plaine in St. Andrew. Now, as you may know, Mr. Chairman, the facilities at Belplain for the sports persons and the community members and the general usage of the constituents of St. Andrew, that activity has been operating out of a compromised building in Belplain. Of course, it was cracking from the ring beam right down to the foundation, rusting steel beams, sinking floors, corroding galvanized roofing. And I visited that community center for the first time when I assumed the responsibility for the Ministry of Social Care. I found the building to be in a deplorable situation. As a matter of fact, so compromised was the building that it was, of course, deemed not suitable for habitation. Now, because of our fiscal constraints, I instructed the Community Development Department to move away from rebuilding the structure because, of course, of the inadequacies of the funding at this time. But we certainly, as a ministry and as a government, could not leave the residents of St. Andrew, and especially the residents of Belplain, without a facility in which they could be accommodated for their sports and other activities. Now, what we're going to be doing, we're moving swiftly to place on the cleared site at Belplain 2 air-conditioned containers, completely outfitted, and these will be used for our changing rooms, toilet facilities, both bathroom and showers, and of course providing space for meeting for the residents to meet there, and it will be fully furnished. That situation, of course, as it presently prevails, is that the sports persons now have no government pavilion, own pavilion or community center in St. Andrew. And this situation was left, of course, or was found by this current administration, when we came to office. Of course, that particular center was in a deplorable situation. The netballers, the basketballers, and the footballers had no place to change. Of course, the netballers in that particular area, there's an adjoining hard court to that current facility. They had no place to change. The basketballers suffered a similar fate. And of course, the footballers that are participating in the David Thompson Constituency Council Football Classic, of course, whenever they had home games at Belplain, the Community Development Department would have to move in tents and other chemical toilets to make the place habitable for their home games at Belplain. With this new construction, of course, the footballers and the other sports people in that area will now have a home ground and a proper facility for changing constructed right there on that site. Other facilities for community members are currently, before of course before the old building was knocked down, the community members in that catchment used to use that building for dominoes and worry and other board games, using of course makeshift lighting. We thought that this could not continue. It also provided space for the constituents to involve themselves in community activity, provide accommodation also for the constituency council. The new facility will do all of these things, provide accommodation for the council for St. Andrew. And as we speak, the foundation is being prepared for the containers to be placed on that foundation. And I understand that the placement and the complete outfitting of the containers will be done within another week or 2. Now, these improvements, of course, come against years of neglect by the Barbados Labour Party administration. Since 2004, Mr. Speaker, a paper was prepared by the last administration for a new facility to be placed at Belplain. When we came to office in 2008, we found what I just mentioned, an old dilapidated building, compromised, and of course, with all of these things that I mentioned, with the steel bent, the ring beams, of course, splitting of ring beams, and all that the building was condemned. We thought at the time that we, of course, would construct a new building on the site. We approached several organizations. We even looked internally at our own finances to see if we could have constructed a building on that site. That was not possible because, like I said before, because of the fiscal constraints under which we are operating. But on the urging of Senator Irene Sandfield Garner, who sits in the other place, we moved urgently to have this new structure put on that site so that the netballers, the basketballers, and the footballers, especially from the David Thompson Constituency Council Football Classic, can have a place that is habitable, that is suitable for those sports people in that district so they can be accommodated well. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, I am happy that we have come to this situation, come to this conclusion, and that the building will be in place in another 2 weeks. It's going to be a fully outfitted container. It's a temporary solution, but nevertheless a solution. And of course, I want to thank, of course, I will now finally get Senator Irene off of my back because she has been pushing for this particular facility and accommodation for a while, and therefore I'm sure that she will be happy, and equally so would be the residents of St. Andrew in general and the residents of Belle Plaine in particular. This center, of course, this refurbished community center, new facility center, will provide classes that will be offered by the Community Development Department in terms of community arts program, the National Lessons Assistance Program, which is a lessons program that is particularly designed for children whose parents cannot afford them the extra tuition to ready themselves for the 11+ examinations. We have, of course, reached out to retired school teachers and asked them and invite them into the program, of course, paying them a stipend so that those disadvantaged children from households who cannot afford the additional tuition, that they can be exposed to that additional tuition to prepare them for the 11+. We also have the Community Entrepreneurial Development Program and also the Community Impact Programs. Those programs are very much grassroots kind of programs that, of course, facilitate cake icing, the teaching of cake icing, macrame, barbering, hair, and nails. Only recently, 41 young ladies from my own constituency in St. Michael Central were exposed to training at the Andrew Allen Center in Station Hill, and they graduated just 2 weeks ago with a lovely graduation ceremony at Combermere School, where they are now fully equipped to step off on their own, pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps, and of course, opening their business or joining together as I advise them. If they cannot do it on their own, they can join together with other members who would have graduated from that class and open a little hair and nails. Because as you know, Mr. Chairman, the young ladies of today, of course, are beautifully turned out and well coiffed and, of course, well manicured. So I am advising, of course, them to join together and, of course, to make small businesses can be incubated through these particular programs. Mr. Chairman, the rest of the money will go towards the Rockfield Community Center in St. Lucie. That is a much-used center. It's one of the older centers in the panoply of offerings of the Community Development Department. It is badly in need of repairs. The roof and floors are compromised. Of course, through these fundings, we will completely repaint and update the plumbing, renewal of the bathrooms, and of course, we will apply the termite treatment to that particular Rockfield Community Center. Rockfield has now a reduced usage. Because of the reduced usage, we had to turn to the St. Clement's Anglican Church and the priest in charge there, Reverend Griffith, where we joined with a partnership between the Community Development Department and the St. Clement's Anglican Church to convert one of their buildings that was not in use. And of course, we outfitted it through the resources of the Community Development Department, and we used the building owned by St. Clement's to create a resource center. The honorable member for St. Lucie, of course, was very much behind this particular initiative. He was at the opening, and he was glad to be in partnership with the Community Development Department and the St. Clement's Church in ensuring that though the Rockfield Community Center was out of use, that we could have joined with the church at St. Clement's and have this particular resource center fully equipped with computers, and also bringing on board the services of tutors to teach these particular programs to the residents of Rockfield and its surrounding areas. So $175,000, Mr. Chairman, will go towards the construction of the new facilities at Belle Plaine, and of course to completely refurbish the community center at Rock Hall and bringing it back into full usage. Before I move away from this, though, Mr. Chairman, I want to mention only today I heard on the calling programs Errol Hurley, who is the former PRO of Barnard. He was lampooning the government and in some way lampooning me as minister for not providing facilities for the National Disabilities Unit, which is now housed on the first floor of the National Union of Public Workers. Now, this building has been identified a long time ago as inadequate and not suitable for the use of the National Disabilities Unit because of its difficulty to access the National Disabilities Unit. Now, this government and this minister, we are all fully aware of the inadequate access to the National Disabilities Unit. But we are not standing around twiddling our thumbs, Mr. Chairman, and hoping for the best. We in the ministry identified a building on Calamarock. This is I would say about 3 years ago. Maxwellton, the former home of the Personnel Administration Division. We have completely refurbished the building, air-conditioned it, repainted the walls inside and outside, fixed the roof completely, put up new offices, repainted it, completely restored. Now, this work has taken longer than I anticipated. Now, if I could have done the work, I would go and do the work myself. But I don't know a hairpin from a hairpin. So therefore, I had to depend on the expertise of the artisans in the Ministry of Transport and Works and the National Housing Corporation. Now, it has taken longer than I thought it would have taken. But on the radio today, I understand this gentleman has been criticizing the government and criticizing me as minister for not delivered on this promise. Now, like I said, Mr. Chairman, if I could have completed the work myself, I would have done so. But we have to wait on the artisans in those two agencies to have this work completed. I visited this location about a year ago, and I took along a contingent of people, not only from my ministry, but also members of the disabled community. And this same gentleman was among the contingent. And we showed them what was going on, and of course we gave them a completion date which could not have been met because the work has not yet been finished. I visited there about 2 weeks ago, and I saw the almost, I would say about 97% completed building, and I was assured by the contractor and the builder that the building will be delivered to us by the end of April. Now, I am hoping that all things being equal, that this building is delivered to us at the end of April. But you see, the whole thing about people going public with these things, because I have kept the staff in the loop, as a matter of fact, they keep me in the loop also by giving me updates on when the building will be finished. I took some members of the disabled community with us that time to tour the building, so they know that a building is being prepared for them so they can move the headquarters of the NDU from the NUPW headquarters to Maxwellton in Calamarock. So they're all aware of that. But the same Mr. Hurley, the PRO of Barnard, he is not disadvantaged because he was taken care of by this government by putting him in one of the accommodation that we have at Valerie, because we feel as a government that we should take care of our disabled community. So the same Valerie that is now very much in the picture, the former PRO is now accommodated in one of the units there that was designed specifically for the disabled in our community. And he should have said so when he was on the radio today. But that is the sort of things that we have to live with. So, Mr. Chairman, I am pleased that this $175,000 will go towards those two projects that I mentioned before, and I hope that it will bring some facilitation to the work that we do both in St. Lucie, at Rockfield, and also to the work that we do at Belle Plaine in St. Andrew. And I'm sure that the Member of Parliament for St. Lucie and our our confirmed candidate in St. Andrew will be pleased that at last something is being done positively in the terms of community development, positively, along with the other offerings that the Community Development Department does in those two particular areas in Barbados. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Head 42 stand parked.
Member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Chairman, I want to say that I very much support the work that has occurred at Rockfield, because there's a very long history as it relates to this particular project. Rockfield is one of the oldest community centers in Barbados. It was dated as far back when you had to use the smart lamps. And people like John Spring and them ensured that it was well used. Sometime under the Barbados Labour Party, it was in decay, and we came together as a community group, and we ensured that we collected money and so on, and we totally refurbished Rockfield. Then it so happened, as the minister has stated, that the problem has reoccurred, and I had spoken to the minister because there was a belief that because the facilities at St. Clement's Church was now being used, that there was no need for those facilities at Rockfield. But if you pass there on a daily basis, you'll see that there's a group of ladies who still continue to use it during the day, and the young men in the area normally use it for playing dominoes and table tennis and things like that. And sometimes we have to be very careful, because activities that you can have in locations like these, you cannot necessarily have in locations where you associate with the church and so on. And that is why I impress on the minister that even though we have the facilities at St. Clement's Church Hall, that we cannot ignore the needs of those persons in the Rockfield area, because there are certain activities that they would want to take part in that you would not necessarily want them to take part using church hall, or they might not be allowed by the church to take part in those particular activities. So I'm happy to see that the minister has responded and that the work at Rockfield will be done, because as you know, that is in the same cell location that the cabinet has approved the acquisition of some land so that there could be house spots, solar energy, renewable energy, farming, and light industry, because the area is well suited for that type of development. So I hope that once this work has been completed, and we get an opportunity, and when we come back, we have an opportunity to complete the other work, that the people in the North will recognize that we are not only here to pretend, but actually to execute what we plan. And with the completion of the road, and also with the completion of the road in Rockfield, which I expect should restart in probably next 2 weeks or so, that then everything will go smoothly. Because there's no doubt that there's certain infrastructure that has been lagging, and I'll give credit to the Minister of Public Works, who has tried his best, but I hope that there will be completion to that work in the Rockfield area, and especially road works. It has been lagging now for about 8 months, and I hope that based on the conversations, that work too will be completed shortly. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I want to, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. Lucie for his comments. And generally speaking, I just want to add that the resource centres and the community centres in Barbados are all very well appointed. I want to thank the staff, of course, the Chief Community Development Officer, and the staff of the Community Development Department, who are really first-class and first-rate officers. They do their very best with very little resources, and I want to thank them publicly for standing in the breach when it comes to the community development offerings of that particular department. We recently outfitted 2 new centres, one in Gall Hill in St. John and also the other one in Baywoods in St. James. We converted those to community centres, not really complete conversion, but we use certain sections of the Gall Hill Pavilion, Gall Hill Community Centre and the Baywoods Community Centre, and we segmented certain sections so we can provide resource centres with computers and tuition tutors in those 2 community centres so that the course offerings could be extended to those 2 areas. I had the Honourable Member for St. John at the opening of that Gall Hill Resource Centre in St. John just a few months ago, and also the same thing in Baywoods. Our candidate for that constituency also attended the opening of the Baywoods St. James Community Centre, and I'm sure both the Member of Parliament and the confirmed candidate are also happy to see that the resource centres are now installed at those 2 community centres. Of course, we are now offering level 3 and level 4 classes at 12 locations across the length and breadth of Barbados, and this dovetails with what we're offering through our It's for Teens program, which caters to teens during the summer holidays every single year. Offering. So information technology, Mr. Chairman, is being well taken care of at the community level by the Community Development Department. And I'm really pleased, again, like I said, with what is being done by the staff, by the Chief Community Development Officer and her staff. Remarkable job, and I say well done, you good and faithful servants. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Head 42 stand part.
Questions at Head 42 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, Head 78, Ministry of Culture, Sports and Youth, $880,010.
Member for Christchurch West Central.
This request for supplementary in relation to the National Culture Foundation in the amount of $1,880,010 are required to supplement the estimates for the financial year 2017-2018 in respect of the National Culture Foundation meeting a number of outstanding payables with respect to goods and services. Of course, the National Culture Foundation, Mr. Chairman, would have also been required to cut the allocated expenditure in relation to the allocations. And of course, the National Culture Foundation relies heavily in terms of the gap between what is allocated and what, of course, is requires the NCF to rely on projected earnings in terms of revenue. And those projected earnings, Mr. Chairman, relate primarily to what the NCF proposes to earn from the Crop Over Festival the annual Crop Over Festival, as well as the National Independence Festival of Creative Arts, otherwise known as NIFCA, revenue from rentals, and other revenue. In this particular case, Mr. Speaker, of course, there was a deficit due to the fact that, of course, those projections did not materialize as was expected. Of course, we had some shortfalls in relation to crop over, and of course, you are aware that the National Culture Foundation relies heavily too on the sponsorship arrangements with the private sector for the execution of crop over. And while for the most part, the promised sponsorship, which helps to address the shortfall, is usually met. In this particular case, of course, there were some outstanding obligations in relation to sponsorships that, of course, was unpaid. And we did also have some shortfalls in relation to the sponsorship for NIFCA. There are also a number of payments due in relation to a number of outstanding payments due to the NCF. And of course, the creditors of the NCF, there are a number of creditors. Some of these creditors, of course, relate to the Crop Over Festival, and in fact, most of them relate to the Crop Over Festival. But there are also the outstanding creditors include the Barbados Revenue Authority, which would be in relation to PAYE, the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, and of course, other venues where the NCF would have to use these venues for the execution of their activities. And because of the shortfall, as I indicated, in relation to the revenues of the National Culture Foundation, we have before us a number of outstanding payables, which we believe should be liquidated, notwithstanding, Mr. Chairman, the fact that the NCF has been pursuing a rather aggressive collections policy, and indeed the board will be tightening that collections policy to ensure that those entities and individuals who are obligated to meet certain payment requirements with the National Culture Foundation will be required to meet those payments. And indeed, the NCF is very much at that stage, particularly with some outstanding creditors, to take the necessary action to recover those particular monies that are outstanding. In the meantime, Mr. Chairman, the outstanding obligations are impacting on the NCS activities, and of course we have an obligation, notwithstanding the increased focus on debt collection, to seek to address these matters. We are hopeful that the outstanding sponsorship commitments and the payments in relation to rentals and monies owed, there are a few government institutions that do owe the NCF some money as well, that we will be knocking on their doors very shortly in relation to collecting those. But in the meantime, to ensure that there is no further undue strain on the operations of the National Culture Foundation, this supplementary is being requested. The amount of $773,789.34 is owed to general vendors. As I indicated, some of these particular vendors only recently. The sum of $716,975.52 owed to those supplying goods and services in support of the Crop Over Festival, and the sum of $470,670 is owed to NIFCA vendors, and therefore the total amount of the supplementary which is being requested is in the order of $1,880.10. I would also like to say, Mr. Chairman, that the National Culture Foundation is really one of those statutory corporations that I am indeed very proud in relation to how it has conducted its affairs. I had opportunity only recently to applaud the NCF's board for its management in relation to the financial prudential standards at the National Culture Foundation. The NCF is not only up to speed in relation to its annual financials, but certainly in relation to its reporting and its functional management continues to be exemplary. The National Culture Foundation, of course, I would have alluded in the estimates to the tremendous work that the NCF is doing in relation to its cultural development program. And in particular, the NCF has performed outstandingly in relation to the significant growth, particularly over the last 9 to 10 years of the island's Crop Over Festival. Crop Over, of course, is the major festival in Barbados, generating annually and conservatively estimated at around $80 million annually in economic activity. And that kind of economic activity, Mr. Chairman, cannot be scoffed at because of the impact on the economy. And therefore, the NCF stands in a very critical position in relation to its affairs and in relation to the importance of the Crop Over Festival. The festival itself, I must say, over the years has attracted significant attention, not only in Barbados, but internationally. And therefore, it remains one of the drivers of the flow of foreign exchange into Barbados. It acts as a stimulus to the Barbados economy. It also generates, Mr. Chairman, quite a number of jobs for Barbadians, particularly those in the creative sector. Many of our young people find employment in Crop Over on an annual basis. And therefore, the festival, in addition to that, the festival continues to be one of those activities that will continue to impact in terms of our economic growth strategy. Indeed, we have seen significant growth of the festival over the last few years, and the projection is that Crop Over will continue to grow. I believe once Crop Over continues to grow, we will see the generation of not only domestic revenue, but further generation of foreign exchange. The festival and the operations of the National Culture Foundation are indeed in need of further capitalization. It is at a stage, of course, where in terms of the tight fiscal situation of the government, that entities such as the NCF would have had to also take a slice off of their budget. But I believe, and I've said in the past, that in relation to the NCF's prime preoccupation, which is the management of festivals, that we will certainly have to look in a more proactive way at how we could make available to the NCF additional funding if it is that we have seen and it has been proven that the NCF has been executing well. The festival that is generating foreign exchange for Barbados is performing well. Therefore, then it means that the allocation of resources to the NCF will have the impact of further increasing the potential for earning of foreign exchange. Now, one of the issues that we often have to face, as we have seen here in this supplementary, is what happens in any particular year when, of course, the promises for sponsorship does not necessarily live up to expectations. And I must say that there have been some very consistent corporate sponsors of the Crop Over Festival and NIFCA, and they continue to place their sponsorship dollars at the disposal of the NCF. And I want to applaud them publicly for the continuous support and partnership which has ensued. In fact, it is as a result of the tremendous work and the support of our sponsorship partners and all of the players in the Crop Over Festival that Barbados can boast of having a hugely successful Crop Over. The festival has also benefited from the fact that there has been significantly improved relations between the NCF and its stakeholders. In fact, on an annual basis, the NCF conducts very proactive consultation sessions with its stakeholders in advance of each festival. And this has had the enviable result of having a festival where there is absolutely no controversy, which is a phenomenal achievement for Crop Over, given the history of Crop Over. In prior years, Crop Over would have been impacted almost every year, predictably, by controversy. And I'm pleased to say that that has been a thing of the past. And I think that that should be credited in terms of what we have been able to do as an administration. I can say to you, Mr. Speaker, that certainly the government can make a number of claims in terms of the transformation of Crop Over. And I would say to you that certainly some of the things that have happened in terms of the empowerment of stakeholders in Crop Over is that we have certainly taken the level of prizes. The award of prize money in Crop Over has been taken to a new level under this administration. In fact, for the first time last year, we were able to offer, for the first time in the history of Crop Over, a vehicle to the best designer, which was never been done before. You know, the likes of some of our stalwarts in the festival have been calling for a while for at least the best designer to be able to vie for a car. And I'm pleased to say that last year, with the proud support of one of our esteemed corporate sponsors, we were able, through McInerney's, to offer a vehicle to the best designer. And we're certainly very hopeful that that particular prize will be available for Crop Over this year. And I want to applaud those efforts. And indeed, we have expanded the offerings in terms of the involvement of particularly those sponsorship partners in the automotive field. And we welcome back to the fore Courtesy Garage as one of the sponsors as well. In addition to the array of sponsors, Mr. Chairman, we were able to transform the ownership of the festival and expand the ownership of the festival. And particularly in the area of vending, some 3 years ago, we made a very significant decision in ensuring that vendors did not have to go and camp out outside the NCF to get a license to operate during the festival. And we have brought some decency to the activity of vending during Crop Over. And we made one single decision and said that once a vendor has been continuously vending in Crop Over for 3 years or more, that automatically that particular person would be able to claim their spot. And we did something further. We removed the idea of having to come and camp out at the NCF, and persons were able to get, to get an appointment to go and pay their fees. We also did the extension where we are provided for vendors to be able to pay their fees in installments and did not have to pay them all at once. So we have certainly accorded what should have been done in the first place. And vendors have a very important role to play in the success of the festival, and indeed we have actually given them the respect that we certainly felt that they deserve. Crop Over has been expanded in terms of the number of activities, and the focus has been to grow the cultural industries within a festival that offers for a 6-week captive period Barbados on show to the rest of the world. We've certainly seen the numbers in terms of the arrivals driven by this spectacle. The Crop Over Festival is now a major international brand, which of course, working with the BTMI, they have done a very good job in terms of the marketing of the festival internationally. And each year, we work with the BTMI in all the main markets that all of our source markets, to increase the visitor arrivals in Barbados. Crop Over, Mr. Chairman, offers a tremendous opportunity for increased spend by our visitors. And we have seen through the utility of hired vehicles, the hiring of spaces. I mean, as I speak, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, Crop Over has actually started. The all-inclusive fetes have started to launch, bands have started to launch, and indeed we did the sponsors launch to the sponsors in January. So the festival really, the planning period for a Crop Over Festival has now basically gone perhaps full circle, where it is planned as soon as one festival ends, the planning for the coming festival begins. And what we have seen as certainly a legacy of Crop Over, the kind of specialist skills that Crop Over has been able to develop, both in relation to event planning, in relation to equipment handling, the technical area of managing a festival, stage management, and of course feeding into that are the young people coming out of the community college. What this meant, Mr. Chairman, is that all of this impacted significantly on Barbados's ability to be able to successfully execute CARIFESTA 13 last year, because we had all of the ingredients available to us in relation to those skills to execute CARIFESTA. And going forward, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, Crop Over as an expanded festival, combined with what happens in NIFCA, because NIFCA itself is certainly proven to be a tremendous growth festival for a lot of talent, which is exportable talent. And we've seen that NIFCA, and 3 years ago, of course, we launched an initiative called the Jackie Opel Award, in which we are systematically creating the impetus for the development of local music. And very shortly, of course, I'm sure the House will learn of an initiative to again bring some respect to the name of Jackie Opel, when, of course, his gravesite is being restored to the dignity that it should have in terms of Jackie Opel. But the image and the work of Jackie Opel continues to live on in terms of spooge music. And I know the member for St. Philip North has advocated to me that we need to do more in that regard, in terms of how we not only internationalize spooge music, but we create a festival that combines, if possible, spooge music with other activities. And I can say to him that that's something I've already advised the NCF that we should look at carefully to see how we could actually create more impetus in relation to the impact that Jackie Opel has had. And Jackie Opel, of course, has had a phenomenal impact on music in Jamaica, for example. And during the CARIFESTA, we had a special symposium which actually looked at the work of Jackie Opel, and this is really mind-boggling to understand the impact that Jackie Opel, at a very tender age, has had on global music. So I think Barbados is well positioned to do quite a lot in terms of how we then can translate this very rich array of locally grown talent into a creative sector that can use the talents of young people to transform the economy of Barbados. And I remain very excited about that prospect. It is clear that the statistics, certainly in terms of global statistics, in terms of the impact of the creative sector on the global economies, that Barbados, once we do the right thing as we are doing, we build on that framework, that at some point in the future we will not have to be so concerned about the growth of our foreign exchange, when in fact we can do it through indigenous activity and in relying on the creative talents of our young people. So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to give that brief background in relation to what is happening here, because I believe that any amount which is placed at the disposal of the National Cultural Foundation, given the importance of their activity, and now combined, of course, with the importance of the Barbados Culture Industry Development Authority, that we are signaling for the first time that not only are we talking about the impact of the creative sector, but we are prepared to place the resources at the disposal of the key engines upon which we rely on, namely the NCF and the Culture Industry Authority, to really pave a way forward for how we are going to position this sector going forward. So the amount that's being asked, Mr. Chairman, is really to consolidate the financial position of the NCF and to ensure that it can get ahead with its work in a manner that does not constrain its operations. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, with those remarks, I now beg that this head stands par.
Question is head, sorry, 78, stand par. All our members in favor, please say aye. All our members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of 2 money resolutions in Committee of Supply.
Question is, I do now report to His Honour the Speaker the passage of 2 money resolutions in Committee of Supply. All our members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All our members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Members, this full sitting is resumed. Members, your chairman of committees has reported to me the passing of 2 money resolutions in Committee of Supply.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that these resolutions be read a first time.
Honourable members, the question is that these resolutions be read a first time. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Be read a second time.
Honourable members, the question is that the resolutions be read a second time. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the resolutions be now agreed to.
Honourable members, the question is that these resolutions be now agreed to. Honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Accordingly, the resolutions have now been passed.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Yes, sir.
With that, we've come to the end of government business for the session. Not the day, not just the day. And I beg to move, of course, that the sitting be adjourned, full stop. Sir, speaking on the adjournment, of course, there's no such arrangement. There's no such arrangement as far as I've been advised. Speaking on the adjournment, though, Mr. Speaker, obviously the term of this Parliament will end on Monday, and the usual arrangements will be made for a new election in Barbados, at which time people of Barbados will make their various choices among the 30 constituencies, among those of us who offer ourselves for service. Mr. Speaker, I want to use the opportunity to certainly thank the members of my constituency, the constituency I represent, Christchurch South, for this opportunity to have served so far for 2 terms, and look forward to their continued support as we deal with the general election whenever that is called. I also, sir, I'm sure that I convey those sentiments on behalf of all members of this chamber who may not, in the tradition, have an opportunity to speak on this adjournment. Mr. Speaker, of course, I want to offer thanks too to the team, the clerk and his team at the table, and those who manage the affairs of this Parliament, who see to the order. The Cabinet Office, of course, without the coordination is significant, and there are a lot of people who are not fully seized with the kind of work that goes on behind the scenes to make legislation operative and to put money at the disposal of our varying ministries so we can carry out the work of our country. And so I think we appreciate very much the opportunity to work with these good men and women as we continue to serve our country. Mr. Speaker, of course, those who provide security here at the Parliament and in other places where members operate. Sir, we obviously, the constitution of this Parliament will depend, as I indicated, on the outcome of that election. But I will use this opportunity to say thank you once again and to wish you, sir, all the very best, and obviously to wish my colleagues too, members of the opposition, the honourable member for Christchurch West, who is the leading spokesperson, of course, for the UPP. I wish her all the best too. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move with those few words that the sitting be adjourned.
Seconder? Seconded. Yes, honourable member, Christchurch West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too, on behalf of the opposition, on behalf of the United Progressive Party, I wish to associate my thoughts and my words with those of the Leader of Government Business. I certainly wish to thank the people of Christchurch West and the people of Barbados for this very noble opportunity to serve them at this level. I believe that there is no exercise more noble than giving back to your people, and it was indeed an honor to serve all of Barbados. I too wish to thank all of the members of this honourable chamber, those on the government side and the opposition, the members of the clerical staff, all of you. I certainly wish to thank you. I want to say, sir, on behalf of the United Progressive Party, that we recognize that we are in a technological era, and that the old governance model that took Barbados to independence and that took Barbados to the 21st century is not a model that will take us much further. We need a new model of governance, sir. We need people who will embrace the technological advances that are at our disposal. And we ask for that mandate. We do so to refresh this country, fresh minds, clean hands, and a sincere heart. So we too, sir, look forward to the opportunity to serve and to revitalize Barbados and to take Barbados forward. The potential is ours to grasp, and grasp it we shall. So we thank you all, and I say to everybody, may God bless you, and may we continue to have him as our guide. Thank you.
Honourable members, let me associate myself with the comments from the floor. And in doing so, of course, let me express my thanks to particularly the staff here, both at the table and the other support staff who are so critical in making what we do possible. I also want to thank the good people of St. Michael West for making it possible for me to serve at this level, and also you, the members who have reposed your confidence in me to occupy this place. I hope that I have done your confidence well. Let me, of course, wish you all going forward. And having said that, then, wish you all very well going forward. And having said that, then, all that's left for me to do is to put the question that this House be now adjourned. Sign the day. All the members in favor, please say aye. Those in favor, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.